How does one go from a seemingly boring, ordinary 37-year-old white male living in Fairfax, Virginia, working for the IRS to someone that's accused of setting up his wife for a fetish account and having a stranger coming in and then murdering the both of them while your 4-year-old daughter is in the basement? All for what? A 22-year-old au pair that you've been dating just for a few months? That's very interesting. I mean, is it though? I feel like in the news, we often hear about husbands finding someone new and then resorting to murdering his wife, maybe even the entire family, just so he could pursue this new life with a new, young love interest. But quite honestly, a lot of us have this question of why not just divorce? Good question. Why not just divorce? Well, not for Brendan Banfield. You see, Brendan Banfield, divorce was just not an option because he didn't want to share custody of his 4-year-old daughter with his wife that he's known for about 18 years. And it's not like the wife had a history of abuse or anything. It's not like the wife was horrible, mean. He just complained and said, oh, well, my wife is just... she doesn't take care of me, she's lazy and she's not good for my daughter. Really? That's it? She has a job. She was a nurse at the ICU. But no, not for Brendan Banfield. He wanted to pursue this new life with a 22-year-old au pair who had been living under his roof for 1 year. And by the time he came up with the murder plot, they'd only been dating for 2 months, man. Talk about just being head over heels and completely delusional. Now, Brendan Banfield, his trial is in the news right now. You guys may have heard of it as the au pair affair. Yeah, it kind of rhymes there. The jury in the trial, they are currently, well, not currently because it's the weekend, they got off, but it is deliberations right now. And by Monday, maybe we will have the verdict. People on the internet, I think a majority of the people believe that he is guilty, that the au pair was telling the truth. And when Brendan Banfield, yes, the defendant does testify, well, there was a lot of holes in his story. And it seems like he was kind of just making it as he goes, especially when being cross-examined by the state prosecutor. Jenny, what's her last name again? She had a pretty cool last name. Okay, I'll remember it throughout the video. Now, I want to recap you guys the trial of Brendan Banfield because it is pretty wild. And the good thing about this trial, it wasn't like 4 weeks long. It's about 10 days. So we're going to go over the testimonies of the witnesses. And if you guys are not caught up with the trial, well, here I am. I'm here to recap it for you guys. And I will do my best to pinpoint out the most important parts because this trial was so crazy. I mean, not only do we already have this wild story out there that captured a lot of people's attention, but the trial itself, oh man, was it just a mess? And you know what? We also had a presiding judge that you guys might recognize. Judge Penny Asgarati, who was also the judge in Depp v. Heard from 5 years ago. You guys believe it's already been, oh my God, it's already been 5 years since that trial. Oh boy. But day one starts with the 911 call. And you like listening to 911 calls because we like hearing how crazy, chaotic the situation was. If the defendant is on the phone, what's his demeanor like? Now, we do remember that sometimes in traumatic events, people act in ways that you might not expect, right? So we have that in mind, of course. But there's still some things that people might act that's really strange that we are still going to kind of give a side eye at. Now, looking at this 911 call, it starts off with the au pair, Juliana, who 22 years old at the time. She's like, she couldn't really get her story out. It seems like she was breathing really heavily. She was like stuttering a lot, but she came out and said, friend was stabbed with a knife. I don't know what to do. Okay. Friend. All right. Very interesting. Maybe there's a little bit of a language barrier back then.
My friend, she just was stabbed with a knife. Now she's bleeding a lot. I don't know what to do anymore.
Okay. Where are you located? What's your address?
Oh my God.
But because she's having such a hard time getting her words out, Brendan grabs the phone because Juliana, she's like struggling on the phone at this point. She's not really saying anything. And he announces himself as a federal agent. He stabbed her. There's bleeding. I don't know what to do.
My name is Brendan Banfield. I'm a federal agent. This is my house. There's somebody here. I shot him. But he stabbed her. She's bleeding. She's got several marks on her neck. What do I do? What do I do?
Okay.
And to me, it sounds very rote. It sounds like he was just trying to get his script out there that his wife is bleeding, but he was stabbing her. I mean, where is the frenzy? Where is the panic? Where is the desperation to try to save your wife at that moment? And listen, some people do try to stay calm under stressful situations like this in order to communicate effectively. But if you were Brendan, you were the husband, you had just witnessed your wife getting violently and traumatically stabbed right in front of you, I seriously doubt that you're going to try to stay calm. Instead, you're going to try to do anything you can to try to save your wife and get emergency help, to stop the bleeding, get the ambulance to show up as soon as possible. Now, this is just me here. This is my speculation, but it sounds like he had already distanced himself from his wife at this point. I mean, he doesn't mention her as his wife initially. It's just like, oh, he stabbed her. Oh, very interesting. When the dispatcher was like asking for more information, they're asking how old. He says, I don't know. The dispatcher's like, no, the person that's bleeding. And he's like, he must have been like, oh, my wife. Okay, yeah, she's 37 years old. Like I said, I think at this point, he's not focusing on his wife that's bleeding in front of him. He's more focused on getting his story straight, which is someone got stabbed and, ooh, there's a man right there. Not really focusing on his wife that needs immediate medical attention. The dispatcher is going to get more information and ask about, okay, well, what about the person that was shot? The stranger that was in his house? Brendan Banfield, honestly, I feel like he would sound a lot more shocked. If there's a stranger in your house, you just shot, well, wouldn't you wonder if there were other strangers in your house? Wouldn't you be a little bit worried that there could be other people, because this man apparently was attacking your wife and you had to shoot him because your wife was getting attacked with a knife, or you'll see what the story that he puts out there. But you would be kind of scared that, oh, there might be other people in the house. Oh my gosh, my 4-year-old daughter is in the basement. Let me make sure she's safe. Let me make sure that we are taking care of her, make sure the au pair, I don't know, like do anything, right? Like your focus is on saving your wife, but at the same time, you also got your young child in the house. There just seems to be a lack of urgency and fear that your daughter might be in danger. Officer Beckner is going to testify in the stand that he was one of the first responding officers at the scene. He walked towards the back of the house and entered through the basement. However, this door was unlocked, wide open, and in the basement was the 4-year-old daughter who had stayed there the entire time through everything that was happening upstairs. Now, the plan for that day was for the au pair to take the daughter to the zoo around, I think they're supposed to head there at 7:30 in the morning. At this point, Brendan had just left to go to McDonald's to get some breakfast. He was supposed to go to work that day, and the victim, Christine, was still sleeping in her bedroom. But as the au pair is getting ready to leave with the vehicle, she noticed a strange car pull up in the driveway and a man coming out and just walks into the house as if it's nothing. So she's panicking at this point because she doesn't know who the stranger is. She's been living at the house for, I guess, a year now. And so she calls Christine, was like, hey, who is this stranger? But it goes to voice message. She calls Brendan, tells Brendan what's happening. Brendan tries to call Christine. It goes to voice message and he's panicking a little bit. So he decides to come back from McDonald's, and the three of them are gonna enter through the house, through the basement, not the front door for some reason, and then leave the 4-year-old daughter in the basement by herself with the dog. On the body worn camera, we're gonna see Brendan washing his hands at the sink, and the officer did say in the stand that, he did kind of feel bad that the defendant had blood. He was crying, he was blowing his nose. And so he didn't stop him at that moment. And the rest of us are thinking, no, in hindsight, oh my gosh, all the gunshot residue, the DNA, the blood, all that just going down the drain. But I get it. Sometimes you're human and you just forget these things. But oh man, they were not able to swap his hands before he washed his hands. Actually, I don't know if they actually swapped his hands at all. I think they did though. I think so. At some point, we do get a medical examiner who is going to testify, and Dr. Kessler is going to talk about the injuries that the two victims sustained. The first one was Joe Ryan. Again, Joe Ryan was a stranger who apparently Brendan saw attacking his wife, and that's the reason why he had shot him. Joe Ryan was actually shot twice, one in the chest and then one in the head. The second victim, Christine, she had sustained some really serious injuries on her neck. She had about 7 stab wounds. The injuries indicate that there was some movement, meaning that she was alive while she was attacked. Not only that, They also found blood in her stomach, meaning that while she's being attacked, she had also swallowed blood during this time. We're still in day one, by the way. We're going to have the au pair who is going to testify because this 22-year-old at the time au pair, well, she decided to take the plea deal and testify against her lover. We're going to cover that after I have my lunch, so when I come back, the lighting might look a little bit different. Now, imagine you are the jury. You listen to this crazy opening statement given by the state outlining the story of this case, and then on that very same day, you hear the testimony of the au pair. Now, remember, the au pair, she took a plea deal, and in exchange for that, she has to testify. Whoa, holy... What is happening here? In exchange for that, she had to testify against the defendant, her lover. The story that she tells, it's a wild one. Get some hot chocolate, maybe a blanket or something, but oh boy. We are going to go back to October 2021 where Juliana arrives and she's the au pair of Brendan and Christine's I think like 2 to 3 year old child at this point. Now, for 1 year, it was like smooth sailing. She was getting paid $200 a week. She was getting room, board. She lived at the house and she barely interacted with Brendan. You know, he wasn't really talkative. However, Christine, on the other hand, she was very friendly. She was very welcoming. Within less than a year of staying there, she's going to backstab Christine. And that's when the affair starts between her and Brendan. August 2022. Now, she was flaunting this relationship. She was posting it on social media. She was sharing it with her friends. Her friends knew about it. However, on these social media posts, she would always make sure to block the man's face with like a emoji. However, his voice was in the background. During this time, she was only about 21, 22 years old. Very young, by the way. Like, yeah, she's over 18, but still, damn, 22 years old and this man is 37. The two of them, their relationship was moving quite rapidly. Within 2 months, they were already talking about plans of getting married, having children together. And it was until October 2022 where the two of them went on a trip to New York, but Brendan's 3.5-year-old child was also present because, again, she's the nanny, right? She's supposed to help around. She's supposed to watch the child. Christine was not on this trip. So let me tell you something. During this trip, Brendan thought it was easier to murder Christine. Mind you, they've only been dating for 2 months at this point. She's a 22-year-old girl or 21, I forgot what it was, but divorce was just not an option because he didn't want to share custody with Christine. He said that Christine was lazy, even though she was working as an ICU nurse at this time, working 12 to 13-hour shifts. He called her helpless, and probably the big thing was he just thought she didn't care about him. So that's why I'm going to have her murdered. Never mind that she's a mother of my child. Never mind that it might be very traumatic for my child to go through having a mother being murdered very violently. Now, in the same month, in October 2022, he takes his 22-year-old girlfriend to the firing range so she can learn how to shoot a gun. And he does take her again in December 2022. He also will purchase her a firearm. The grand mastermind plan that the two of these came up with was, we are going to create a fetish account pretending to be Christine, and we are going to catfish someone to come into the house. And well, apparently Christine had this whole fantasy of being assaulted in her own home, even though her family would be sort of nearby. They grabbed Christine's laptop, they got her phone, pretending to be her, and whenever they would create this account or interact with this account, they would make sure that Christine was always physically home. That way, when investigators, when they would look into the murders, the crimes, they would be able to confirm that Christine was for sure the one who was at home using these devices while she was interacting with it. Now, not only that, they also created her a fake Telegram account, a messaging app, so she could secretly message these men online. While they were going through it's called FetLife, by the way, the app. While they were going through the communications, they saw that Christine, by the way, was communicating with multiple men. Now, there was one guy who said that they live in Richmond, but Juliana, she testified saying that, well, Brendan didn't want someone who lived in Richmond because it was too far. It would take them too long to get to the house in Fairfax, Virginia. Another user wanted to meet in public first, because if you're going to engage in something that is a little bit risque with a stranger online, you want to make sure you're meeting the person that you're communicating with. But this person was turned down because, obviously, if you're not really Christine, why would you want to meet with someone in public? And Juliana looks nothing like Christine, okay? She looked nothing like her. There was another stranger online that, was engaging with this Christine account. By the way, the account name was Anastasia Knight. I feel like this is like a Lifetime movie or something like that. But our next stranger was like, hey, I don't know if I'm really comfortable with doing all this and during the first attempt, during the first time meeting you. So I think we should meet in public. I think we should have multiple encounters and slowly work our way up to restraints. And then again, Juliana testifies saying that, well, Brendan was like, nah, we can't deal with this guy. So their excuse that they gave to this guy was, oh, but it takes away from the excitement. I want my first encounter with a stranger to be dangerous as possible. So they found Joe Ryan, the second victim of the story. And Joe's username was Taco Supreme. And the reason why they chose Joe was because Joe was, he might have been new to the website. I think he might have been new to all of this. He unfortunately didn't really see the red flags in this encounter, and he was willing to do what Brendan wanted him to do. That's what Juliana said. The agreement was to come to the house, bring restraints, bring a knife, and walk into the house. The door would be unlocked. Don't worry about that. But Christine was going to be in her bed sleeping, and Joe was to go in and ravage her. Now, the two of these guys, they really thought this through. I'm doing air quotes here. They really thought this through. They traded in their phones because they wanted to make sure that they would have a new Apple ID. They also made sure that the windows were like soundproof. Apparently, months before this happened, the Banfields had upgraded their windows. Initially, they were going to do double pane, but now let's go for triple pane, okay? That way, you could soundproof a little bit more, and it would help with the sunlight coming in and the insulation. But Juliana, she talks about this test that her and Brendan did, where one person was to stay inside the house in the bedroom, scream as loud as they can, while the other person was outside to see if neighbors would be able to hear and call for help. They also arranged to have Juliana's car parked in the cul-de-sac that night. That way it wouldn't be in the driveway, so Joe wouldn't be able to see it. They canvassed the neighborhood to see which neighbors had security cameras, which neighbors had the Ring camera. Also, Brendan, leading up to the date of the murders, well, he decided to change his routine a little bit. His routine would be to go get breakfast at a nearby McDonald's or wherever. That way, if they were to look at him as a suspect, it wouldn't be weird that like, oh, why is it on this day that you decided to go to McDonald's, but this is something you never did before? Yeah, he really seemed to really think this through. Now, they also told Christine to take off work today. I think this was the day after Brendan's birthday, and Christine initially had to go to work, but Brendan convinced her, no, stay home. We've got plans. The other plan was to have the au pair take the daughter to the zoo for like an all-day trip thing. Now, the morning of. There was communications between Christine's device and Joe, but Juliana said that they took Christine's phone, they brought it downstairs, they messaged Joe, I think with like her phone and her laptop, and using her phone, they were able to unlock the front door, disable the auto lock function, that way it stays unlocked. And not only that, they took the phone and hid it in the kitchen drawer. Now, if you were Christine, would you really want to have your phone to be so far away? Additionally, they also turned the phone off. So that way, Christine would have no communications whatsoever. Now, the plan was to have Brendan leave the house first. He would go to the McDonald's like 5 to 6 minutes away, pretending to get his breakfast. I think he was in the bathroom for 7 minutes. Maybe he was blowing it up. Or maybe he was waiting for the call for Juliana. But Juliana was supposed to be, her car was parked at the cul-de-sac. Remember, not parked at the house. It was parked at a cul-de-sac nearby, and she was supposed to stall and pretend like she was getting ready to go to the zoo with the 4-year-old child. But this is where she sees a car pulls up. She sees Joe getting out of the car and walking to the house. Her role in this was to be freaked out and be like, oh my gosh, there's a stranger who just came into the house and just walked right on in. So she's supposed to fake call Christine. I mean, she does call Christine, but because Christine doesn't have the phone and it's turned off, it's downstairs, It goes to voice message. She's supposed to panic call Brendan and say, oh my gosh, there's a stranger that came in. I can't get in touch with Christine. Brendan will call Christine 2 times, and again, it goes to voice message. And Brendan's going to call Juliana again and say, oh my gosh, I can't get in touch with Christine. I'm on my way back right now. I'm coming over. Juliana said that she had a gun with her the entire time. Brendan, because he works for the IRS, which I actually don't know why, but for some reason he has a gun. That's part of his duty. I don't know. Apparently, they maybe do some very interesting things at the IRS. His supervisor, which we will hear from him later, was talking about how they did undercover work in Baltimore, but I kind of want to look into that more separately. So Brendan comes back with Juliana, with a 4-year-old child, and they're supposed to go check in on Christine to make sure she's okay, right? Instead of going to the front door, though, they went to the back basement door, which is kind of interesting. And then they leave the child in the basement by herself. There is a dog there, but I think there's been some disputes on like where the dog really is, though. Kind of an interesting, like, we're blaming the dog, we're blaming the au pair at some point. Don't worry, we'll get to Brendan's testimony. So the child gets left in the basement, unlocked. Mind you, there's a stranger in the home. They go up the stairs. Brendan has a gun ready. Juliana has a gun ready. And when they go into the bedroom, they see that there is a strange man on top of Christine. Brendan yells, police officer. And this is where Christine says, Brendan, he has a knife. So Brendan shoots Joe. But Joe's face, he looks really shocked for some reason. Brendan runs over to Christine and Christine yells, Brendan, what did you do? So she sees Juliana standing there and tells Juliana to call 911. And Juliana, she's not thinking. She's just taking directions at this point, and she calls 911. But this is where she screws up.
Fairfax County 911, where's your emergency? Hello, Fairfax County 911.
February 24, 2023, 7:47:39.
Because she called 911 way too early. This wasn't part of the plan. Christine was still alive. So Brendan does the motion, telling her to hang up. And she does. She hangs up.
And I think that point she had seen me, and she said she had asked what to do to Brendan, I think regarding to that he shot Joe. And she said my name. She told me, Juliana, call 911.
And what did you do?
I called 911. At that point, Joe was already shot, so that's the sound in the background. And Brendan looks at me and just, in a way, for me, like to hang up the call.
Did he tell you? Did he say, Juliana, hang up the call?
No, he did not.
How did he communicate to you?
A gesture.
And what gesture did he make?
This.
And so what did you do after he made that gesture?
I hung up the phone, the phone call.
And can you imagine being Christine wondering, oh, wait, why are they hanging up? Why aren't they calling 911? Why aren't they rendering aid? Brendan comes towards her as she's laying on the floor of the bedroom that they shared and starts attacking her, stabbing her in the neck. And if you're Christine, I mean, there has to be a flurry of emotions and thoughts just going through your mind, possibly, right? Or maybe you're just thinking about like, oh my gosh, like I'm getting stabbed. Like, I don't know if I can even think right now. But you're sleeping in your bed. You just got assaulted. Your husband and your au pair comes to save you. And now your husband is attacking you. I wonder if she thought that, is my husband attacking me because he thought I was cheating on him and he's mad at me? Or did she realize that her husband and the au pair was in on it? I can't imagine all the thoughts that went through Christine's mind during that time. Now, Juliana said that she ran to go get a towel. She came back and she knelt down and her hands, like, she felt the carpet on the ground. The blood was there. It was warm on her hands. She apparently was like trying to cover her eyes and her ears, and she was like kind of like pacing around or something like that because she didn't want to hear the conversation that was happening between Christine and Brendan. I wonder what that conversation was. I don't know. I can imagine. Now, at some point, she runs to the safe to get the gun, but when she was testifying in the stand, she was like, I actually don't even know why I even did that because I already had the gun on me. But I think that was supposed to be part of the story, you know, that while Brendan was rendering aid to Christine, Joe started moving. And then that's why, you know, Juliana ran to the safe to get a gun, even though Brendan already had a gun on him. Doesn't make sense. But I think this is how they played it out in the movies, maybe in their head. Now, while Christine was getting stabbed in the neck, Joe on the ground starts moving. And that's when Juliana, with her own firearm, shoots Joe in the head. Now, this is a time when it's not time to call 911 yet. You would think it's time to call 911. It's not, because they have to stage it. Juliana said that Brendan got a handful of his wife's own blood after stabbing her and started dripping it on Joe's body, you know, to make it seem like the violent interaction happened between Christine and Joe. That is what she testified to on the stand. That's what the jury got to hear. She was arrested in October 2023. She pled guilty to manslaughter. Now, remember, she was initially offered a misdemeanor. She said no to that. Later on, as she sat and rotted in jail for a little bit, she was given an offer of a manslaughter. She took that, looking at max 10 years. 2 people died, and she's looking at a max of 10 years. Yeah, it sounds like a fucking joke. But law enforcement, prosecutor, they had their eyes on Brendan because he was the true mastermind. He was the one that stabbed and murdered his wife, and then he still shot Joe. So he still contributed to that. Juliana, when she's testifying in the stand, she said that she was hoping to get less than 10 years. She talks about how her attorney was paid for by Brendan's mom. Kind of interesting because I wonder what the mom is thinking, right? Because the mom probably doesn't think Brendan's guilty or Juliana's guilty, but it's like the woman that is suspect of murdering your daughter-in-law and is the mother of your grandchild, you're going to pay for her attorneys? I mean, I guess maybe you really thought the law enforcement had it wrong. Because she was arrested in October 2023, I mean, the murder happened in 2023, meaning that they had 8 months of their honeymoon phase where things were good again. Christine is dead, and we got everything that we wanted. They lived in the same master bedroom where Christine and Joe was shot. They redid the floors. They took down the pictures of Christine and Brendan and put these like tacky ass big photo frames of Brendan and Juliana. There's another one where Juliana's kissing Brendan on the cheek. All of Juliana's clothes that was originally in her bedroom with the Brazilian flag has now all moved into Brendan and Christine's bedroom. She was the new mom of the house. She was the new Christine of the house. It's just so wild to me that it seems like they just acted like nothing happened. 2 people were murdered in there. It's so wild. It's just so crazy how sick these 2 people are, if you believe that, you know, they both did it. Now, like I said, all of this is alleged right now because Brendan is still, he's not convicted yet. He's not convicted. There's no guilty verdict. You know, he could come out of this unscathed. We'll see. We'll have to see about that. We'll have to see until Monday to see if there's a jury verdict that comes out or if it's if it ends up being a hung jury. But they asked her, why did you decide to take this plea deal? And Juliana's like, it was the right thing to do. You know, it was on my mind for a long time. Everyone deserves to know the truth. She felt shame, guilt, sadness. It was really weighing on her, but she was hoping to get less time. Of course, less time. Now, the reason why she said that she didn't take the misdemeanor before, like she probably should have, was because she was kind of afraid that she wouldn't have communications or something with her family back in Brazil, because Brendan's family, the mom, was footing the bill for the attorney. Brendan's mom was helping her get commissary and pay for her communications, in order for her to talk to her mom and family back in Brazil. She was financially very dependent on Brendan's family. And if she were to go to trial and plead her innocence, she was afraid that she wouldn't have any communications with her family whatsoever. And probably, she wanted them to continue to pay for the attorney. Now, the wild thing is, during this time when after Christine was murdered, after Joe was murdered, not only did Juliana live in the household and move into the marital bedroom, Brendan's mother lived with them. Brendan's grandmother also lived with them. And I'm sure it's probably to help out with the family, be there for the grandchild. But what did they think about Juliana moving into the bedroom so quickly and then resuming their relationship as if nothing happened, as if Christine wasn't just murdered? Maybe they were happy that he moved on so quickly, because sometimes grieving for your loved ones, it kind of sucks, right? Maybe they were happy for him. Or maybe they thought it was weird too. Oh man. Let's get into the defense's cross-examination very briefly. The defense really focused on Juliana's letters that she wrote to Brendan, her family members, during the time that she was incarcerated. Initially she talked about the pain, the torture of living without Brendan, and she was just really depressed. She was really anxious. And then she couldn't believe that she would have to face life in prison for someone, and that things were not supposed to be this way. Because remember, Brendan wasn't arrested yet. It was only Juliana. She did complain about the attorney. She was unhappy about all the continuance. Apparently, more evidence kept coming in, and then the attorney had to hire experts to go through the evidence. The defense really tried focusing on dismantling her integrity. That way, they can discredit her. That way, the jury would be like, oh, maybe she's not believable after all. She apparently spoke with First 48. If you guys know what First 48 is one of my favorite true crime channels, by the way, or true crime shows. Yeah, shows. So she was negotiating on trying to sell her story out there. Now, apparently, based on the negotiations, she was only going to get $10,000, which to her could still be a lot, because she could send money back to her family in Brazil. But still, $10,000 though for a plea deal. I mean, is it really worth it? She apparently had this health crisis that she went through, and then that's when she took on the plea deal of the manslaughter. Now, the defense attorney, I don't know what they were trying to allude to, but they were like, oh, isn't it kind of convenient that you had a health crisis and then you got a plea deal afterwards? And she's like, well, I mean, I withheld the truth for so long that I was getting so stressed. I had a lot to deal with, It was literally making me mentally and physically sick, having to withhold all this. It was just her body responding to stress. And I think when she was testifying on the stand under direct examination, I think she was trying to come off as oh, I didn't know any better. I'm a victim. But oh my God, did she kind of flip a little bit, because she was really holding her ground against the defense attorney. She came off as a lot more intelligent than I initially gave her credit for during direct examination, but cross-examination, she was holding her ground. And I think there were some moments where I felt like the defense was not really, I feel like they were trying to go with a certain narration, but it was landing kind of flat because Juliana was just pushing back so much. In the state's case, they put a lot of emphasis on Juliana's testimony and the blood splatter results. I don't think we saw the cell phone digital forensics, which was really surprising to me. I guess she was waiting to do cross-examination when the defense presented their case, but still, I felt like if you were presenting your case, you want to make sure you got everything lined up. Okay, get all your ducks in a row. But we did get to hear about the blood splatter, and it was the expert's theory that Joe had been, because he had these drops of blood on him, it looked like someone was dropping driplets of blood on him, or someone had taken the victim Christine's blood and splattered all over on Joe's arm, on his jeans, I think. And the way that they found DNA on his own blood DNA in his inner waistband of his pants and the button snap, because to them, they're like, oh, it doesn't make sense why the blood would be there, because that would mean that after he bled out, after he was shot, that's when he decided to start undoing his pants. Wouldn't that happen before, right? Because that was when he was trying to attack Christine. By the way, to him, it was all consensual. This is all consensual thing, because they were on this fetish app. I want to make sure that we don't forget about Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan was also a victim in this as well. He thought he was engaging in consensual sex with a woman that he met online. And unfortunately, maybe he was just naive and there's just a lot of red flags about it. And he just didn't see it, With the blood splatter, there were also some interesting lines of demarcation on his hands. So Joe was found in a position, I think he was on his back, and his hands were kind of like this, in a very odd position, almost as if it was staged that way. There was mention of how it seems like there were places where the blood would have kept on dripping but because there was something in the way, it caused like these like harsh lines on his hands. But when law enforcement got to Joe, there was nothing there. There was no items or anything that would have blocked the flow of blood. So it seems like before his prior position, his hands had something on there that stopped the blood flow from going down further. But when he was moved to a new position, that object was removed. So that's what I noticed on his hands. I'll try to find a picture of his hands that doesn't look too gory for you guys. I'll blur a lot of it out. But if you look at the hands right there, it just seems like there used to be an object there that used to stop the flow of blood, and now it's gone. Now, they also talked about, I think, Christine as well. It seems like, maybe some of the blood was staged. Brendan did have a lot of blood on his hands when they first found him. And then the last witness who's going to testify is going to be Christine's dad. Christine's dad will say that ever since Christine was young, she had bleeding issues. She would have these bloody nose. She would bleed profusely, and sometimes she had to take medication. Sometimes she didn't. However, when she was older and she had to give birth to her daughter, that was something that they were very precautious about. Apparently, there was like she has a blood disorder where she bleeds a lot, and she had to be very careful when giving birth. I don't know if she was giving medication. I think she was giving medication for that to make sure that she wouldn't just bleed a lot, And this is something that Brendan knew about. Okay, just tap it there. Brendan knew about this bleeding issue because Christine and bleeding will come later on. Defense started their case, and they started off with playing these body cam footages. Now, because a lot of these exhibits were under seal, they weren't showing a lot to us. So initially, when we only heard the body cam footage. Now, I think what the defense wanted to do, they wanted to show that, oh my gosh, look at Brendan after his wife was murdered in front of him. Look at this guy. He was crying. He was on his knees. He was like defeated. He was like kind of like limpy a little bit. We did do a react to the body cam footage. I will link the video there. The full video is right there. You guys should watch it. And then I did do a partial react to a separate, in my first video that I made about this case, has a partial react to the body cam footage. But Brendan, you see him, he's crying, he's there. He's like starts limping a little bit, and the officer's like, oh my God, what's wrong with your leg? And I think Brendan, honestly, I think he was just he was sitting on his knees for so long that his leg got numb. And when the officer pointed it out, I think he decided to just like play it up a little bit, like, oh my God, I'm limping. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like my body's like reacting to like this trauma thing. But that's just me, making my criticisms. So we do get to see Brendan's reaction when he finds out that his wife has died. We see him crying.
The cut and stuff probably needs to be switched out.
Can you have someone check with him again?
Okay. What is the nature of the incident?
Check what?
The status of his wife, ma'am.
Hi, sir. My name is Gina. I'm one of the doctors here. Your wife has died. So sorry. So what's been going on with your right leg since this happened? You feel like it's hard?
It's like I'm having spasms right here.
I see. Okay. And where did the person hit you?
I only remember my arm.
Okay. Okay. Once you change into the scrubs, I'll just look you over there. But I see that you're walking and bearing weight. If anything, it's a bruise, or like he said, you have a muscle spasm because of the stress.
But I do see a lot of shifty eyes, like I feel like Brendan, he'd be shifting his eyes a little bit to see if anyone's noticing or observing him. And then he'll kind of just like play it up again, what else is there? We got more body cam footages. Oh, this is where, oh my gosh, I brought this up in a different video. But again, the body cam footage, I think, worked against him because in cross-examination, the state prosecution was like, hey, the body cam footage, you notice that when Brendan was there, he did not use the towels or the blankets around him to try to stop the bleeding on his wife's neck, right? And they were like, oh, no. I'm sure the jury noticed that. Because, again, if your wife has a bleeding issue, wouldn't you try to do everything you can to try to stop the bleeding? Get the towels. The 911 call, by the way, kept saying over and over again, get the towels, get the blankets, use it to stop the bleeding. Brendan did not do that. He had his bare hands on his wife's neck. It's almost as if maybe he let her bleed out, and then by the time law enforcement arrived, maybe that's when he started, oh my God, like, let me try to stop the bleeding with my hands. But no. Not using the towels, not using the sheets. One of the defense's expert is going to look at Joe Ryan's left thumb. She said that it looks like a possible puncture wound, which is, if you were the assailant, it's possible that maybe the knife will slip a little bit and it could cut you as well. They also try to discount the scooping blood accusation, saying that like, how do you scoop blood? And she's like, I don't know, it's like hard to scoop blood. But again, if you're bleeding from your neck, it's a lot of blood that is probably gushing out. So it might be possible to get a lot of blood that's on the ground and possibly try to gather it as much as you can with your hands and drip it on someone. Now, the same expert also tried to criticize the other experts about the drip stain. She said that, oh, just because they're like circular blood droplets, it doesn't mean that someone dripped it on top of someone. It could be other things. And she thought that it was inappropriate for the other expert to, specify what these specific stains were. And then we get a very interesting witness who's going to testify on the stand. Brendan Miller, who used to work with Fairfax Police Department. Now, he was formerly the digital forensics guy. He was the one that created the executive summary that took a look at Christine's devices to figure out whether or not it was Christine who made the FetLife account, made the Telegram account, and was interacting with those apps. But something happened with Mr. Miller, or Detective Miller. He apparently was moved to the child exploitation unit, and it was not something of his own choosing. He was forced to. So through his testimony, the defense was essentially saying that like, oh, you created this executive summary, correct? He's like, yeah, I did. And it seems like they didn't like your report. They didn't like your conclusion. So they booted you off the force and kicked you out. And then this is where we're like, oh, wow, this is the inner drama of the homicide unit. The defense said that out of 12 people that were working on this case, only 4 people remain in the homicide unit today. And he also mentioned that, oh, isn't it kind of interesting that the state did not call these people as their own witnesses? And I was like, yeah, that is quite interesting. I wonder what happened there. He said that he looked at Christine's pattern of life, and his conclusion was that the device owner used the device and that there was no indication of lost dominion and control. However, the opinion changed because more information came in, and that new information that came in was Juliana's new testimony that she and both Brendan were the ones that would take control of those devices while Christine was around and use it to send FetLife messages or use it to make Telegram messages and use it to make the accounts for both of those and also the fake Gmail account. But oh my gosh, on day 6, when the defense was calling their witnesses, I felt like it was a net negative for them. We started off with a slew of officers who work for the homicide unit. Some do, some don't anymore. And we had a Sergeant Brian Ames testifying in the stand where he talks about how he follows the evidence and that, yes, Detective Miller, he was transferred and there were some rumors about that. And then we had Detective Leah Smith who testified, and the defense is really trying to drill into the jury's mind that the people that were in command of the homicide unit, they were just trying to push this narrative no matter what. They weren't focusing on following the evidence. They already had a story made up in their mind, and they were trying to take the evidence and fit it into the story that they had. However, Detective Leah Smith was really pushing back on this, and she was like, yeah, we had these 2 supervisors. Seems like they kind of sucked, and they were trying to force us to choose a theory. But I did whatever. I didn't listen to them. I did my own thing because I know how to be a detective. They're not detectives. I'm going to do what I think is best for this line of work.
How do the theories of cases emanate from an investigation?
So the best course of action when you're investigating a case is to collect facts and information. You don't have theories to begin with. You have an open mind going into it because you don't know what happened. And then you try to gather all of the information so that it gives you a clearer picture as to what happened. We had a briefing within the first week of the incident where we were discussing everything that everybody had done and the information that was collected. And our supervisor at the time told us there were 2 theories in the case and we needed to get behind the right one.
Who was the supervisor?
Lieutenant Smug.
Okay. Who was in the room?
The homicide investigators, the detectives.
Okay. Were there any other people?
I don't recall if there were victim services or advocates or our crime analyst or others who might be there during a briefing when we have just had an incident.
Was one of those theories catfishing?
It wasn't stated what the theory was. It just said there were two theories and you need to get behind the right one.
Okay, what, if anything, did you do or say after hearing that?
I told Lieutenant Smuck in the room full of investigators that at this point in time, nobody should have a theory in the case, that we are still at the very beginning and we should only be investigating and gathering facts and information.
And how was that received?
There was no response.
And did this meeting end? Did the conflict between your statement and the theory that was sitting out there continue in conflict after this meeting? Like in future meetings?
I would say that the investigators on this case knew to investigate with an open mind, even though that might not be along the lines of what the supervisors might have wanted us to look at, how the case to investigate a particular line.
Okay.
Like she had like a don't give a fuck attitude. I'm going to do me. Screw my supervisors. And again, in cross-examination, this is further bolstered.
Counsel asked you about this meeting where you were told and detectives were told that there were two theories and you needed to get behind the right one. You challenged that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did that statement impact how you investigated the case?
No.
Did you see that statement impact how your coworkers investigated the case?
No.
Your investigation was focused on who killed Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield, correct?
That's correct.
And you followed the evidence in your investigation, and that evidence led you to charging decisions, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Juliana Perez-Maglis was charged because you were able to prove that she shot Joe Ryan. The evidence supported that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Banfield was charged when? What was the turning point in your recollection of when Mr. Banfield was charged?
When we got the blood evidence back.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, redirect.
Detective Smith, were you ever feeling pressure to follow a theory instead of evidence in this case?
I did not.
You spoke out about it, correct?
Yes.
Did you feel pressure by command after you spoke out about it?
No, I did not feel pressure. I know what I have to do as an investigator. I know how to investigate, and no matter what they thought or the theories they wanted to put forward, that was not how I was going to investigate or provide mentorship or counsel to other investigators on the squad.
Oh boy, Patrick Bruce. This one, Patrick Bruce. Oh goodness. So Patrick Bruce is now retired. He said it was for personal reasons and for other reasons as well, but he was involved in the transfer of Detective Miller, and this is what he said on the stand.
About Brendan Miller, to have him transferred.
I had indicated that as far as I was concerned, that Detective Miller was not to work another digital forensic case that pertained to the Major Crimes Bureau.
What item of this case was it that caused you such concern?
Could I actually go back for 1 second? I didn't say that he needed to be transferred. I indicated that he wouldn't work a case for the Major Crimes Bureau. Okay. That was Deputy Chief Reed's decision whether or not he ultimately would be transferred.
Oh boy, you're Detective Miller. You're definitely watching these testimonies to hear what your coworkers are saying about you. But there's more to that. I think there were times where I don't know if the defense was just like not prepared or anything like that, but it seems like he was not prepared for this answer.
Were you disciplining him by moving him out of your area?
Absolutely not. I actually retained him in the child exploitation unit.
Okay, so where he is right now?
Yes, sir.
So you decided that Detective Miller was not going to be, I think as you said, involved in any other major crimes while you're there?
Any of the digital forensics for the major crimes cases, correct.
Okay. And then he was transferred?
Within weeks, I would say, yes, sir.
Okay. And what was your basis for that?
So there were a few factors. Would you like me to expand on this?
Were they related to this case?
Yes, sir.
Exclusively related to this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was it related to his work product?
Yes, sir.
And are you talking about the executive summary work product?
That was part of it.
Okay. And so his conclusions were not agreeable to you?
I wouldn't word that way.
How would you word it?
I would word it that his analysis was incorrect.
Okay. And at that time when you determined his analysis wasn't correct, had you had any training in digital forensics?
I had my master's in computer forensics.
Okay.
Did he not realize that this witness on the stand had a master in computer forensics? I felt like he didn't expect that. So again, he's going to continue to talk about why Detective Miller was transferred out of this. There were reasons because of this case and for other reasons on top of that. Oh boy.
What would be the reason that you would differ from your expert's opinion?
Because of some of the unsubstantiated deductions that he made.
Okay, so it's based upon his decisions relating to his digital forensics expertise.
So the deductions in the wrongful analysis.
Okay, so the decisions, deductions, and his analysis.
I think a couple of them, yes.
Okay, how many were there in total?
Off the top of my head, I could probably list at least 4.
Was one of those unsubstantiated deductions recorded in his executive summary that Christine Banfield was the operator of her devices when interacting with the FetLife account?
That's correct.
Okay, and was it that type of unsubstantiated deduction that caused you concern?
Exactly.
Okay. Did you do anything to change his report?
Never.
And then lastly, he makes a great point. He said that unless you are there, like with the person and you saw that they were the ones that were typing in the words, you cannot definitely say who was the operator of these devices. You can say, oh, purportedly it was Christine. You can't say it was Christine unless you actually saw her typing it in. Because again, it could have been anyone. It could have been anyone that was nearby or had access to her phones, her laptops, knew the passwords, and was pretending to be her.
The statement in his executive summary that she had not relinquished any of her devices. Is that what you were talking about?
Well, those are 2 different things. I answered Ms. Sand's question, which would be that, yes, his deduction that Christine Banfield was communicating with Joe Ryan was not only actually unsubstantiated, it was wrong.
Well, so what did you look at to reach the conclusion that it was unsubstantiated? What digital forensics did you look at?
So going back to my education and being a master's in computer forensics, you never attribute a device and or a username to a person.
Okay.
Unless Detective Miller was sitting next to Anastasia or Taco Supreme, he could never attribute whomever was talking on those devices.
And remember, these are the defense's witnesses. I do think the state should have called these guys, but maybe the state thought it was better to have the defense, basically fall in their own trap and then essentially be able to, if there was anything that needed to be fixed, maybe in cross-examination, pointed out. But man, what a gamble. And the defense, I felt like they just fell right into it. Day 7, man, day 7 was a mess. It was the day before the snowstorm was coming on the East Coast, and I did a video covering the chaos of the defense on day 7. Please go watch it. It was utterly just wild. Judge Penny was not very happy at all. She was saying that she started seeing the wheels coming off a little bit with the defense team, and they needed to regroup and organize and make sure they have their shit together. But of course, very nicely and respectfully. Now on day 7, we had a PI hired by the defense, and he essentially talks about how, well, the window replacement thing. It seems like Christine was the one that was engaging the window replacement. They wanted to have their windows replaced way back in 2021. Okay, sure. Maybe that happened. But still, Juliana did mention that there was the window testing scream thing to make sure the neighbors can't hear in case Christine was screaming. There was a picture that they said Christine had sent to Brendan showing off her new bathing suit. She's like at a gym. It's a public area. But this is the same photo that's going to be downloaded later on and uploaded to FetLife as her, I think, like profile picture or something like that. Kind of interesting. They're going to go through Christine's devices. And quite honestly, I did my best to take notes to figure out which device was doing what. But it was just so convoluted. And it was just like, there's so many examples. They showed one device that was browsing on Lululemon. There's an article about a 12-year-old getting her leg amputated, a man dying in a hospital. Then it was like Broadway tickets, the Frozen tour, teachers, I don't know, canceling Rainbow Fish. Is that a thing? And then there was like a device that showed her, or someone going on Signal or on Telegram. Now, they were trying to show that Christine was, in fact, the one that was doing the innocuous browsing and going on Signal, going on Telegram, and doing like the shady stuff that she was apparently hiding from the husband and I guess the au pair. But honestly, to me, it just wasn't really quite clear because it's possible that while Christine went in the bathroom or while she was like cooking or while she was just doing anything, right? Maybe that's when they grabbed her devices and they knew, exactly. I don't know, like you have 2 people that know her pretty well at this point, right? So maybe they were able to really coordinate that very well. There was a message that did pop up and it wasn't very clear if this was from Joe. I don't know if the defense really covered it, but it says, I'm new on this site. I wonder if that was Joe. I wonder if Joe was indeed very new to this fetish to this fetish site, and that's why he just didn't really know probably like the best and most safe way to approach people on this app and to not ignore red flags. But you know what was brought up by the state though? What's interesting is that Christine had no history. She had no history of browsing porn, no history of browsing anything regarding fetish. They even went as far back as mid-2000s. Yeah, didn't find anything. Also, the reason why they don't think it's Christine is because the 2 times when both Juliana and Brendan are out of town, there's no activity on FetLife or Telegram. Quite interesting. They were able to show that Brendan wasn't home on the times that, you know, the person was using FetLife or Telegram, but it could have been Juliana, right? Juliana could have been home, or maybe Juliana could have taken Brendan's device to make it seem like both people aren't home. But you have to, if you're the, you know, the forensic person, you would have to see if, let's say, for example, the times when Brendan and Juliana's phone were not at the house and there was activity on Telegram or on FetLife. Is there 2 independent activity happening on Brendan and Juliana's phone? Like, for example, is Brendan in, you know, like on his way to work, and then Juliana's at the gym, and there's actual activity on there to show that they were in fact using their devices and not just one person taking the device and making it seem like both people were outside of the house. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that just like wasn't really adding up. And then why would Christine, why would she want to do risky behavior when other people are around in the house? Why only use it at the house? Was there any usage of her on FetLife or Signal when she was outside of the house? Maybe at work, maybe on a lunch break, maybe, you know, on her way to just being outside of the house in general, doing other stuff. Like, why would she only do it when other people are around at the house? That doesn't make sense. The onus is not on the defense to prove that, you know, they have to put on evidence to show that he's not guilty. However, you're going to go with the story that Christine is the one who arranged this for herself, that Christine was the one who had the problem, had the issue. Well, the jury, they're going to expect to see more of other behaviors that really supports this theory. Now, this is one of those trials where we do get the defendant that's going to testify on the stand. Yes. Okay, I love it when we get the testimonies of the defendant. I want to hear their side of the story. I want to hear. Now, Brendan Banfield gets on the stand and he says that he's known his wife since they were 18. They met in college and they were married for they've known each other for 19 and a half years. They were just inseparable. And this is where the defense really lingers on the family photos. Like, there's a lot of photos with him and his wife. They're doing the mud run together. By the way, I think they try to point out that, well, if she had this blood disorder, why would she do something dangerous as a mud run? I don't know, because maybe you don't want to restrict yourself from doing things that you enjoy. Maybe you want to challenge yourself in life. And maybe in the mud run, maybe you could be careful. But also, if you did have a blood disorder, would you really want to invite a stranger over to your house, tell them to bring a knife, and then say that you're into blood play and all types of stuff like that? Quite interesting. Now, Brendan talks about, my wife, she had 12.5-hour shifts. She would come back she would leave the house at 6:30 a.m., come back at 7 p.m. at night, and she would just be too tired to interact with our daughter. I feel like he's slowly just trying to throw shade at his wife there to make the jury kind of give her a side eye. Now, look at the demeanor of Brendan while he talks about his wife.
We went to a concert while we were there. We spent time in a cabin. We did quite a bit of hiking. It was a fun trip.
Okay.
For the most part, we were pretty inseparable. We were together the entire time. We didn't break up at any point. We were from college to our first jobs after college, to buying our first house together, to marriage, to spend a lot of time. We spent a lot of time with our friends. This included playing board games and cards, as well as going on vacations together, and going on vacations with other couples that we were friends with. We did a lot of hiking, going to different forests and different mountains kind of around the country. We also...
I do see a glimmer when he talks about his child, but compare that to when he's talking about how the affair started with Juliana.
Juliana showed me quite a few screenshots of her dating app. I believe it was Hinge, and the people that were in the Hinge app all had similar names to me. Their names were Brendan and Brandon and Brennan, and these were people that she had matched with on the app. She, when she was talking about different people, she was described people that she was interested in, people that were taller, people that were older, and it appeared to me that she was, along with the photos, the screenshots that she had shown me of people that she had matched with, that she was basically describing me.
Is it just me, or does he seem like he's reliving the moment? Does he seem to be a little giddy? But like the edges of his lips are like kind of like curling up a little bit, kind of like smiling. And I don't know why the defense does this. They go into the details of how the affair started. I felt like they could have just been like, hey, yeah, you know, we started the affair in August 2022. My wife was out of town, and yeah, I regret it. She came on to me, and I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't push her off, and I went along with it. But then at some point I realized that I was in love with her. You know, just like, he don't really give us the details, but no, he's like sitting there, he's reliving it, and he's like, well, it was August, 2022, and Juliana and I were home. My daughter and wife they were out of town, they were in New York, and Juliana, she started texting me while I was in the kitchen, and she was complaining about her dating activity, how, she didn't like the people that she was matching with on Hinge. And I was like, well, I don't like texting Juliana, so why don't you just like come downstairs and talk to me in the kitchen? And so Juliana comes down and she's like showing her the matches that she had. But Brendan was like, oh, but I noticed that the men, they had similar names as me. There was like Brandon, Brendan, and Juliana said that she was into older men. She was like basically describing me. And so Juliana was like sitting next to me, and she starts scooting close to me, and I didn't stop her advances, At some point, though, we did go upstairs, had a conversation, and she went into my bedroom. I don't know if he's still in love with her. Maybe. I kind of have a theory that he might be, because I'll tell you guys why later on. But he also talks about how he also had other affairs. Like, he just divulged this on the stand just so casually. He's like, yeah, I had other affairs, and, this affair wasn't really important to me. I told Juliana that. This is just an affair. He's trying to make it seem like he wasn't in love with her, but don't worry, the state prosecutor will have something to say about that. Not only did he say that he had affairs, but he is like, yeah, my wife, she also had her own affairs. It's like, oh, okay. So you guys both had affairs per you, okay? Per what you're saying. Okay, interesting. Well, I guess he's going to say that, no, we didn't plan this out. We didn't have this plan to murder my wife, to set this stranger up. We didn't plan any of that. He's going to talk about the day of the murders, though. He says on the day of the murders, he had this very important work meeting. Very important. Again, he worked with the IRS, and apparently they were going to talk about some promotion that he was going to get the following Tuesday afterwards. So it's kind of like, why would I want to have my wife murdered on this very important day? I had to go to a meeting that day. I was going to get promoted. So he talks about how, they were planning on this zoo trips thing, and that his wife was home, and she was actually not sleeping. She was actually awake, and she was on her phone. Oh, okay. He left the house, went to his usual McDonald's, and he spent this like whole time explaining the McDonald's, the QR code, the ordering ahead of time, the reason why he didn't go into McDonald's right away, and the reason why he was like stalling in the parking lot a little bit and like circling around. But he talks about how all of a sudden he gets a call from Juliana, and there's a strange man that just walked into the house. And so he thought, oh, maybe it's my wife cheating again. So he goes back to the house, And instead of telling the au pair and the daughter to continue their trip to the zoo, no. They came into the house with him to confront his wife having an affair, I guess, if that makes sense. He says that they went through the basement because the front door, the front door makes noises when you're entering the pin code in. And when you unlock it, it makes noises. He wanted to sneak up on his wife. But again, it was digital. You could have just unlocked it with your phone. But I guess, as you're unlocking it, maybe it does make noise. He did say that the foyer area, basically, when you enter into the house, the staircase is right there. It's like an echo chamber. It's loud. Didn't want to hear the door unlocking, so they decided to go through the back door up and through the basement, and he told Juliana to stay in the basement with his daughter. That's what he said. Apparently Juliana was like, no, this is when we both went upstairs together and left the daughter in there. But his story was that he went up and he can hear like skin on skin contact. Okay, this is how I took it as, okay, when he was testifying in the stand. He basically said the cheeks were clapping, but because the rhythm of the cheeks clapping were not consistent, they were too far apart. So he thought, oh, shit, maybe it wasn't a affair. Maybe it was something nefarious after all.
I heard the sounds of, I would say, moaning, as well as sound of skin on skin contact.
And what did you think was going on at that point?
Sex.
Okay. Why didn't you call 911 at that point?
Well, I believe that it was an affair that was going on at that point. That doesn't seem like an emergency for the police to be involved in, was my thought at that moment.
Okay.
I guess as my mind was kind of racing in this moment, the sound, I guess, sounded like it changed to me. Instead of what I thought was the sounds of sex, I thought that the impact sounds sounded forceful, and that Christine's moaning sounded painful and not pleasurable, and that the distance between the sound of the skin-on-skin contact sounded too far apart for sex, and I thought that maybe she was being hurt.
So what?
So he's going up the staircase and he hears, during this time, he hears the door open somehow. He heard Juliana come in with the daughter, I guess. But he's going up the staircase and he hears all this noise, all this commotion. Somehow hears the front door open or some door open. And he walks in on his wife with a man on her. But this is how he describes his wife. He said that he saw his wife nude on all four. The guy was clothed and the guy saw him. His wife, while on all fours, tried to get up on her knees. So he goes in and yells, "Police." Christine, the victim, apparently said, Brendan, he has a knife and he saw something silver in her hair. He goes on to talk about how unruly, how frizzy her hair is. It's hard to see. She's got hair everywhere. She's got long hair, long locks. And Joe was apparently behind the wife, kneeling. He yells to drop the knife. Joe yells, "Drop the gun." So he drops the gun, and then he tells Joe to drop the knife. However, this is when Joe was like, "No, she's all mine," and starts frantically, apparently stabbed the wife once. And then the wife moaned, and then she kind of turned over and got stabbed again a second time. But again, her hair was in the way. He couldn't really see. There's just so much going on. And so he was like, "Let her go. You're gonna be under arrest." At this point, we get a second stab. And this is when the spinning happened, where the wife got stabbed a second time and she spun away from him and she rotated. She landed on her stomach on the ground. He got his gun again and shot him. Joe moved backwards. He moved towards his wife, and he stepped over Joe's body to check on the wife. She was holding on her neck. She said that she couldn't see. She was speaking at this point. She was shakily, she was removing her hand off her neck. She grabbed her husband's hand and then put her husband's hand and put her hand on top of it. I don't know. It was just like a whole, like, I don't know. Like, what's that game called again when you're like Twister? It was like a game of Twister where they were fighting over like the left hand on red, and they're just putting their hands on top of each other or something like that. Apparently, he's the one that tells Juliana to call 911 because she was just standing there the entire time, just stunned, just watching this whole thing, not doing anything, not interacting at all. Christine said she was bleeding out, and he said, this is what came out of Christine's mouth, that she was sorry and she loved him. So you're telling me Christine probably knew that she was dying? You know, she's got a blood disorder. She's been stabbed in the neck 7 times. She's talking, and the only thing that she had on her mind was that she was sorry and that she loved him. No messages whatsoever with the 4-year-old daughter. Nothing like that. Okay. All right. Now, while he was helping Christine, apparently Joe came up from behind him, hit him in the shoulder, and that's when Juliana just somehow magically had a gun and shot Joe. Quite interesting. Now, when I had my own theory of, well, not my own theory, but I had my own thing of like, I think they should have went with this story instead, because he's essentially saying that it's not my fault. It's not the au pair's fault. It's my wife's fault because she was having an affair on me, and it's Joe's fault because he's the guy that came in and for some reason came for consensual sex and all of a sudden decided to become all frenzy and just start killing my wife. He didn't really throw Juliana under the bus at all, which really surprised me. That's why I was like, oh, is he still in love with her? Because here's the thing. This is what I outlined in my stream. I think he should have went with this story. And of course, there's going to be holes in the story, but I think there's way more holes with his version. But he should have said that Juliana was the one that set up his wife. Juliana, she wanted the green card. She wanted the citizenship to the United States, and that she was madly, madly in love with him. She was the succubus. She was the seductress. She was the one that seduced him into having an affair, that she wanted to be with him, and she was the one that wanted to get rid of the wife. That would track with the digital forensic evidence, because when their expert was going through the digital stuff, essentially they were like, oh, when someone was using FetLife, when someone was using Telegram, look at the times that Brendan was outside of the house. Brendan wasn't there. They barely even focused on Juliana. So it's like, okay, that could support a theory that Brendan, in fact, wasn't home, and Juliana was the one who was at home, and she was the one that was pretending to be the wife while messaging all these dudes online on the fetish app. I think that could really support, reasonable doubt there that, oh, wait, was it Joe? Was it Brendan that was involved? Or was it really just all Juliana? And if you blame it on Juliana, you don't need to attack the wife's character. You don't have to convince the jury that the wife was the one that was having an affair. You wouldn't have to bring up your own affairs, because then the affair thing wouldn't even come to the picture at all, except for the affair with au pair, right? Because the reason why he had to basically bring up this affair thing was because he was like, oh, well, my wife was also having an affair. But if you blame everything on Juliana, you don't need to attack your wife. You don't even need to mention your own affairs. You don't even have to say that your wife had affairs and that your wife was into BDSM and that your wife was into the fetish stuff. And it would explain why your wife didn't have any search history prior or porn sites that supports her fantasy. And then he can say that, well, because Juliana was the one who set everything up, I didn't know what was going on. When I went into the house, I really thought there was a stranger that just went in. I had no idea. And I went upstairs and, this stranger, this is where I think he should have also changed his story, where the stranger was already attacking his wife. He should have said he walked in on it, that the stranger was attacking his wife and he shot the stranger. And then it would also explain as to why Juliana called 911 the first time. Oh, let's get into the 911 call really quick. 911 was called, remember, because Christine was alive at that time and she told Juliana to call 911. Juliana stupidly didn't follow the plan and just went into robot mode and just called 911. But then Brendan was like, no, hang it up because it's too early. That would explain why the first 911 was called. Because Brendan can say that like, oh, I told Juliana to call 911. She called 911. And while I was too busy helping my wife frantically trying to stop the bleeding, I didn't realize that she hung up. Apparently, there's a 15-minute gap between the first 911 call and the second 911 call. So maybe Brendan could say that like, oh, I wasn't paying attention. And when I realized that she wasn't on the phone with 911, I was like, what the fuck? Like, call 911. And that's when she called 911 again. I think that could be a good explanation for that one. And then afterwards, there was a witness who testified. Remember? The witness that was part of the victim's advocate department, where she said that, you know, she overheard the conversation between Juliana and the 4-year-old daughter, where Juliana, I think the daughter was like, oh, you know, will you be my mommy? And she's like, something to the sense of like, yes. And that, will you marry my dad? And she said, I wish. Well, that could show the motive right there, that Juliana had motive all along, that she wanted to be the new Christine. She wanted to marry Brendan. She wanted to be the new mommy. And would also explain as to why Juliana would want to take the blame and come up with this intricate plan of, you know, making these accounts, going after Christine and going after Brendan. It would explain as to why she took the blame for all of that, because she was a part of it, right? Instead of saying, oh, no, she didn't do any of that. She just made this whole story up. I don't know. In my version, he should have said that Juliana, the reason why she took the plea deal is because she was culpable for it. However, because she was pissed at me for not responding to her jail correspondence, she was pissed at me for not engaging with her anymore, that she started to throw me under the bus and started to, you know, tried to get this plea deal. And basically she got pissed at Brendan for leaving her incarcerated, not helping her out. And so she was trying to save herself ultimately, right? I don't know. Like I said, there are holes in the story, but I think my version of events would have been way better than what Brendan came up with. If you believe that his shit was complete bullshit, I think he should have just blame it all on Juliana. Avoid attacking Christine's character, avoid saying that she had an affair, and it would just explain a lot of things. But anyways, you guys let me know. Now we get into the cross-examination of Brendan, and oh my goodness, was the state attorney just on top of it. Just on top of it. She brought up as to why would Brendan wait 3 years to tell his side of the story? He's like, oh, I didn't have an opportunity to tell my side of the story. And she's like, what do you mean? You didn't have access to the detectives? You couldn't hit up the prosecution's office? Like, we've never heard this version of events before. There was also a preliminary hearing for Juliana. He didn't tell the story then. He's like, yeah, I told, you know, my attorney told me not to. Okay. Now, remember when Brendan, when he was trying to downplay his affair with Juliana, he said that like, oh, I've had affairs before. They're casual. Like, this relationship's like not important. That type of sentiment. Well, the attorney, she brought up some receipts and she was like, huh, it seems like Juliana tried to break up with you on Valentine's Day about like a week before. And you were desperately trying to convince her not to. You're begging her to talk to you. Because remember, you know, on Valentine's Day, right? It's probably really touchy for them because Valentine's Day, Brendan's supposed to be spending it with his wife. His wife. Juliana probably wasn't happy because Juliana was like, why are you spending with your wife when you have me? I thought you loved me. So that's probably why Juliana got upset and wanted to break up with him. But man, she goes through Brendan's letters that he wrote to Juliana. Oh boy. Oh boy. We're getting like Chad and Lori vibes here. Okay. I think Brendan even wrote a story for her. Brendan wrote a poem, but let's read some of the letters. I only have pain and suffering without you. It's gonna be hard to highlight this. Sorry, guys. Your conversations about leaving of or letting me go, setting me free are the most painful. I hate them. They make me cry every time. You are irreplaceable. You are my person. I believe you will have the best of life together. The full of love, happiness, or just one, I think. Support, fun, laughter, romance, and fulfillment. Sorry about the mess on the page as I'm crying while I'm writing it. I know it sounds selfish, but I don't have anyone without you. My mom is openly hostile and wants to fight every day. Grandma and mom fight all the time, and grandma wants her to go. I basically have no friends anymore. Seems like I don't know, like this is an adult writing this. It seems like a child is writing this. You can probably convince me to go to Brazil with you. if that is what you want to truly, if that's what you truly want. I'm sure we can work and have wonderful life, but I need you to be sure. But I think our careers would be significantly worse than if we stayed. We don't need to stay in Virginia also. Oh man, oh my gosh. Okay, this is gonna get really cringy, but we're reading it. Memories I love. I love taking the day off work and I took you out for breakfast after we made love. We went to Founding Farmers. Oh gosh, I know that restaurant by the way, where we had eggs, bacons, potatoes, and hot chocolate with whipped cream. And then we went to the botanical garden in Vienna and walked around, holding hands, talking, looking at the beautiful flowers that could never compare to you. Oh gosh. I can't believe they were openly just touting their relationship out in public. What if you run into people? We walked around the lake and sat on the bench where I put my arm around you and you leaned cuddling into my chest. We had so many kisses and I could just stare into your eyes and I knew how much I loved you. We kept walking and found another bench where you wanted to rest, but this time you sat on my lap and wow, those kisses were intense. It was such a turn on. I'm sorry, y'all. We spoke a lot about your family. I was learning about what a loving and caring person you were. Your laugh, your smile was contagious. You told me it was you were having a wonder. What the fuck is he writing? After the botanical garden, we went to the movies and being with you just filled me with joy. Unfortunately, I don't remember the movie, but you told me it was the longest date you ever had. I was thinking how I never wanted to end, that I wish for this happiness every day. And that's why probably got rid of your wife. This is the part where they're riding their bikes to McDonald's and then they got caught in the rain. Oh man, let's read a little bit here. There was a light break in the rain, and we told your mom we were going to make a run for it and go home. It obviously started pouring again. If the rain was cool and there was steam coming off the concrete, you took off your glasses because they were covered in raindrops. You complained about your eyelashes, LOL, but the smiles and laughter on the way home was amazing. When we got home, we took off all the soggy stuff in the laundry room and ran upstairs to a hot shower with me watching your naked butt up the stairs. Does he not notice though? We kissed and I held you close while we waited for the shower to get warm. After a long, hot shower, we went for a long, hot cuddle, smiley face, and heart. I remember you falling asleep first as I pet your hair, thinking you were the best thing on the whole planet. Oh my God. What about your daughter? I fell asleep and yeah, like, oh gosh. Oh wait, there's more. Let's just read a little bit more. I'm not gonna read all of them. They uploaded so many notes, but I'm just gonna read some of them, okay? Here's another note or a letter. Obviously, there's comfort in bed, cuddling and laying down, but the counter is where I shared myself with you, spoke about my life, my love of you, hopes, dreams, plans. Is this where you plotted the murder too? It's where we got to know each other. It's where we flirted, shared drinks, meals, snacks, chocolate-covered strawberries if you were upset. Sometimes even more if I couldn't wait to touch you. Gag. Oh my gosh. I feel like you're just like obsessed over her. I think you were the only person that truly loved me. Quick song. Matchbox 20 push. Oh my God. Flirting the hot tub was incredible. Relaxing, sexy, mentally stimulating, loving. Seeing you walk in public in a thong with me feeling you're mine was such a turn on. Was she walking around and her thong was like flashing? You stayed on your bike so I can see your ass in the thong on the roads of VB and then going to lay down on the beach. No. Watching you get ready, picking out dresses, slipping them on, putting on heels so I can grab you, spin you around and kiss you forever. Watch you brush, blow dry your hair off to naked underwear robe. It was a true fantasy done by my dream girl. This is where he calls her a fucking hero. And I think later on he tries to explain it and say, well, technically she was a hero because she saved me from Joe Ryan attacking me from behind. I think these are just poems that he writes. I think they like write poems for each other. I previously went years without affairs. You know that. I don't know what this means. Does it mean that he never had affairs before, or he had affairs, but then there's a period of time where he stopped having affairs? I don't know. I fantasize about you. OMG, seeing you with your bra and no bra. Holy shit. I can just picture you. Okay, where was I? Trying to see if there's anything else. Oh, this one is important. They were talking about names for their children. Oh man, again, he was trying to downplay and say that the relationship with what's her face? Juliana was not really serious. Names. I feel like I want to have this conversation while cuddling, holding your hand and having the other on your belly. It's a dream I can't wait to have. I really like the name Chloe that you suggested. Daphne's another I like. She was a god of springs, and brooks, reminding me of you with the color. For now, I find boy names more difficult. Robert, Robbie, I actually like the name Robbie, came to mind after my father, grandfather, my middle name. I like Lucas and Ethan. All right, so I'm done reading it, but if you guys want the rest of it, they are online. Feel free to read the rest. Now, based on the letters, it kind of seems like he was very much in love with Juliana. So in love that he was willing to kill his wife, destroy his child's life, and start this new life with Juliana, this 22, 23-year-old girl. And you want to know what's funny, though? Brendan was like, when my wife was murdered, I wasn't even in it with Juliana. I had broken up with her. Quite interesting. Okay. Additionally, the state decides to confront Brendan that, it wasn't your wife that wasn't into fetish stuff, was it? It was you, because you were on this fetish site on sugar babies, and there was this girl named Danielle where you were having an affair with, okay? Not only that, you also had an affair with your best friend's wife, and Brendan's like, it wasn't my best friend. They weren't married. They weren't together. And the prosecutor was like, oh, really? To you or to them? Again, she's going to confront Brendan that Christine had no interest in any of the fetish stuff. They didn't find anything in the search histories. And then additionally, like, if you're using a profile picture on this fetish account, why use a picture of you? Like, yes, you're in a bathing suit, you look great, but you're like in a public bathroom, okay? Usually, if you're setting up like a profile picture, or if you're sending pictures to someone, it's usually like a selfie, you know, maybe a sexy one. You're not like in a public bathroom. It's usually a little bit more intimate. It really does seem like the photo that Christine had taken initially was really to send to her husband, be like, hey, look at my new bathing suit. Isn't it cute? Oh, and here's the big one. Why would his wife schedule to have a stranger to come in at a time that was so close to when everyone else was leaving the house? When Brendan was leaving the house, when Juliana and the kid was leaving the house? Why schedule it so close to that? Why not? Also, like, if you saw that Juliana hadn't left yet, and her car's there, wouldn't you want to make sure that everyone's definitely gone? So if Christine did indeed set this up, right, wouldn't she make sure that everyone was gone for sure? And if she saw that Juliana was still, had a car parked with the child in the car, she would text Joe, be like, oh, wait, hold on, don't come yet. I'm waiting for my babysitter to leave. That didn't happen. She's going to make fun of Brendan for being in the bathroom for 7 minutes. Like I said, maybe he was blowing up the toilet or something, okay? Maybe that Egg McMuffin didn't go down very easily. Maybe he digested it really quickly. Who fucking knows, though? But it seems like when he got that call from Juliana, when he left the bathroom, it didn't seem like he was in a rush. It seemed like he was just like walking out. Because if you wanted to catch your wife cheating, then you'd probably want to run out. Or if you thought that your wife was in danger because the stranger was there, you'd probably run out of the house, right? Why didn't you call 911? And as she's confronting Brendan as he's testifying in the stand, I mean, I could kind of see, like, the story kind of like crafting in his mind. He's like, well, I didn't run because I thought she was just having an affair. Well, why didn't you call 911? Oh, because I thought she wasn't having an affair and I didn't think it was anything dangerous or scary, or, I just thought it was just an affair. I didn't think it was anything wild. There's also that, that basement door. Why did you not lock the basement door? If your child was in the basement, wouldn't you want to lock the basement door to protect your child if you thought that it could have been a stranger danger? And then additionally, when Brendan comes upon his wife getting attacked, she said that, well, you described 2 stabs. When did the other 5 stabs happen? Because Christine had 7 stabs in his neck. When did that happen? He's like, he couldn't really definitively say. I guess he was just trying to say, like, it was just such a mess of a scene that he doesn't know. Oh man. So in redirect again, they are really, instead of like, there's so much that the defense or there's so much that the state really destroyed Brendan on. And again, in redirect, the defense is just going to focus on making Christine, the victim, look bad. Apparently Christine, you know, had bruises on her body and Brendan would confront her. Back in 2014, they had to get treatment because Christine had an issue. Back in 2013, there was like counseling again because Christine had an issue. She was into this and they needed to address that. He talked about how I don't even know how this made sense in any way, but how she had a stalker for a few weeks, but that's it. I'm not quite sure where he was supposed to land with that. He talks about how she had significant bruising on her legs and her butt and she couldn't really walk. So again, like alluding to like, oh, she was cheating on me and she was getting these like affairs. Again, there's no photos, no evidence of any of this, just his own words. And then we had an audio specialist who, poor guy, by the way, again, I covered the defense's disaster in a separate video. Please go watch that. But the audio specialist comes back to testify and he is supposed to analyze the 911 call. Now, remember the first 911 call? The one that happened prematurely, the one that didn't happen on plan? Well, Joe was still alive. That's what Juliana said. That's what you heard in the 911 call. Joe was still alive. Christine had not been stabbed yet. Sounds like there's someone that's crying, that's in pain. Now, the defense's, their argument for this is that it actually wasn't Joe. This is actually the sound of the dog. Yes, we're going to blame the dog. Sound of the dog because, you know, they had this audio of the dog howling and it was like an hour long, I think it was like an hour long video that they had of the dog howling. And so they took a 6 seconds that seemed to like have a match to the 1.7 second 911 call. And they're like, yeah, it sounds very similar. It kind of like tracks, it kind of matches. But of course, you know, I think in rebuttal, the state had their own witness that said that like, no, it doesn't match. And it indeed, you know, doesn't seem to be the dog that made this noise. It's probably Joe in the background making this noise. I don't think he said it specifically that though. We did have a surprise witness though. Oh man, surprise witness, you know, just I guess a rando who just wants to insert himself in. Sorry, I'm thinking about the Debt We Heard when they were talking about Kate Moss, just a rando. T. Patrick Smith, our surprise witness, and I was making all the guesses in the world as to who the surprise witness would be. Because apparently, after hearing Brendan's testimony, they were like, oh no, I'm coming in, I'm going to correct something. And I actually guessed it right. T. Patrick Smith was a former coworker, was Brendan's supervisor. Now, why would Brendan's supervisor, why would they want to come in and testify? Well, Brendan told the story where he had that very important meeting the morning that his wife was murdered. And, you know, essentially alluding to why would I want to murder my wife and at this important meeting to go to. Mr. T. Patrick Smith was like, I was the supervisor of Brendan back then, and there was no meeting scheduled. What? Brendan's lying? What did he lie about this? As a matter of fact, Mr. Patrick Smith was like, I was in Baltimore doing undercover work. That's why I was like, oh, wow, I guess people in the IRS might do some really interesting work because I assumed that Brendan was just like a desk person. And then I was like, wait, why does he have a gun? Like, I guess they're doing like some real stuff out there. So he was doing undercover work in Baltimore, and the other supervisor, Juliet, wasn't even in the country, okay? So there was no supervisor for Brendan to meet with. There were other people that were put in charge, but they were in Georgia. There was no meeting to be had with Brendan. Brendan's lying. And then the state prosecutor was like, okay, well, let's say if you were going into a meeting and it's a special promotion thing, how would you dress? Because this is Brendan's outfit. Brendan looks very casual. He's got this like track looking jacket thing on. He's wearing jeans. He's wearing tennis shoes. And the guy is like, I mean, it'd be semi-formal. I would wear like a suit, a tie. And I wouldn't be wearing jeans. Like, I wouldn't be wearing that outfit. Oh boy. So at this, you know, it just doesn't look good to the jury, I would assume. You have this man who lied about something that seems kind of innocuous, not a big deal. Like, oh, why would you lie about this important work meeting? Supervisor was like, no, there's no important work meeting. Oh, man. And then that was the end of it. The jury got to hear closing arguments. And what a word of a difference of the closing arguments of the state versus the defense. The state was very straight to the point, was hitting all the good, important points, you know. The defense, I just felt like he was just really stretching it a bit, you know. It was pretty lengthy. I don't want to shit on the defense too much, though, even though they're completely unorganized and he was just kind of all over the place a little bit. He seems like a really nice guy, though. He seems like a really sweet guy. I would not want him as my defense attorney, though, but oh boy. Now, in closing arguments, like I mentioned, there are so many points that the state hit on to remind the jury that it just doesn't seem to really make sense that Christine would be the one who would have this fetish account. She had no history of it. There's no proof of that. There's no search history. They went back to as far as 2000s. No searches of that. No evidence of like her affairs or anything. But Brendan and Juliana, they were the ones that had everything to gain. Juliana testified against Brendan. And she also mentioned this, though, like, why would Juliana confess to being a murderer? You know, you're a felon at that point for $10,000. $10,000 to get from, you know, the networks to sell her story. Like for $10,000, really? When she can not be a convicted murderer and then, you know, she was found innocent, then she would continue working, right? Maybe as an au pair or something, or maybe something else. But for her to do it for $10,000, does that really make sense to you guys? Or did she just really feel guilty about the whole thing and decide to just fess up at the end? Yeah. I think throughout the video, I really, I pretty much, if I recap the closing arguments, is everything that I've said in this video. But the defense, they did mention their closing arguments that, you know, why was the fingerprint and the DNA not done on the safe? If Juliana did indeed go to the safe and retrieve that second gun, why didn't they test it? They really try to harp on why Juliana, when she was telling her new story in exchange for the plea deal, why didn't law enforcement push her back on it? Well, you know, I think it's because her story, they would take the story and make sure that it corroborated with the evidence that they had. He asked why they didn't test the gun, the blood on the gun, and that the executive summary, you know, again, trying to show that, oh, within law enforcement, something shady was going on. They weren't happy with that guy's executive summary, so they booted him out, and then they created a new one. But I don't think that really panned out very well, though, because when he did get law enforcement to testify, I think a lot of the people in the law enforcement, they either transferred, they either got promoted, or maybe they retired. It didn't really seem as crazy as how he made it seem like. I mean, yes, Detective Miller was booted off because they were like, yeah, he's never to work a digital forensic case again. And they yeeted him out of there. He tried to say something about Juliana didn't know how to work Gmail, but that's not what Juliana said. She just said she didn't create the Gmail account. Also, we saw Juliana's email. It was a Gmail account. So I'm sure she knows how to work Gmail. There's not a lot to working Gmail. So the jury, they deliberated on Friday for about 3 hours. They're going to come back on Monday at 10 a.m. to continue deliberating. Will they find Brendan guilty, not guilty? Will they not be able to vote unanimously and it might be a hung jury? I mean, the state really put out a lot of emphasis on Juliana's testimony because I'm trying to think, if I was the jury and I didn't believe Juliana's testimony, how would I look at this differently, right? But like I said, you know, I think there's just a lot of inconsistencies with Brendan's story. The lack of, it's just like, I mean, maybe he's awkward or something like that. But like, he really just like, when he was recalling that traumatic event of seeing his wife getting murdered in front of him, like there was just like lack of emotion. It was almost as if he was just trying to memorize his script and he was just trying to follow that instead of, oh, wait, I forgot. I'm also a victim. I should show emotion as well. But there's just so much about this case that it just doesn't make sense from what Brendan is saying. Yeah, it just doesn't look good in my opinion. So guys, I hope I did a pretty decent job at, you know, recapping 10 days worth of trial stuff. Again, I tried to just really focus on things that were like really important. There's a lot that I tried to, I mean, there's a lot that the defense said, but the defense's stuff was kind of like, I wish the expert that they had to go over the digital forensic stuff, like he just seems really passionate about his work, but it was really hard to really track with what he was saying. And he gave so many examples and it was just kind of all over the place in my opinion. And there was a disruption too of like putting witnesses on the stand, taking them off, putting them on, taking them off, because there was issues with the Lake Foundation. It was kind of a hot mess, but guys, we'll see what happens with Brendan, you know? You never know. Maybe he'll be a free man. Maybe he'll walk amongst us again. And maybe Juliana will be amongst the public, you know, after serving, what, 10 years? We don't even know what sentencing Juliana's going to get because, again, I think it was like, she's looking at max 10 years, but I don't know if it was like max 10 years for each individual. I don't know if it's going to be like a total of 20 years. And then Judge Ascarati, I think she can also not follow the sentencing for the plea deal that was done. I think she could impose her own sentencing, I think. Oh boy. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We made a new video covering Corey Ritchie. Okay, I know he wants to get out of here. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can hear Remy. He's like trying to get out of here to play. We're going to play soon. All right, we're going to go play with Remy right now. But thank you so much for watching. Have your notifications on for Discord. That's the most reliable way for notifications, in my opinion. I'm going to do the scheduled streams so you guys don't want to go live when new videos come out. But also have your YouTube notifications on as well. Make sure the bell, you know, hit the all so you get all the notifications. But we are going to be covering Corey Ritchie's trial, which is going to happen in about 2 to 3 weeks. So I will see you guys every day for that. Bright and early. So keep an eye on that. We have some new videos coming out soon. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, hit the like button. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button so you guys can stop by, say hello on the live streams, you know, stop by and I look forward to seeing you guys. Thank you so much and have a good one. I'm actually really hungry. Oh gosh, I gotta remember to eat. Sometimes if I don't eat, I talk a little too fast. I'm trying to learn how to slow down for these videos. All right, guys. Why does the Ope hair look like Nick Reiner in this photo? Is it the glasses? It must be the glasses.